Students, today we are going to start with the exercise that is participle clauses. That is there in your truly the Einstein's lesson, isn't it? That is what's the title? A truly beautiful mind. In that there is an exercise. Fill in the blanks with participle clauses. Let me explain what is participle. We learned last year. Participle is there are two types. One is called the past participle. Past participle you all know. That is the third form of the verb. That is, if I say go, that is present tense, went is past tense, and past participle is gone. So this is called past participle. There are two participle. And another one is present participle. That we learned when we learned gerund and all. That time I taught you this past present participle. What is present participle? Present participle is verb plus ing form of the verb plus ing form of the verb. That is verb plus ing. So that is called the what? It can be used as. That is ing form of the verb can be used as a what also? Adjective also, and it can be used as a noun also. Clear? So let us see what's a participle clause here. Clause you already learned. What's the difference between a clause and a phrase? Phrase is a group of words which gives you some meaning, not a complete meaning. What's a clause? Clause has a what type of finite verb is there, and it has a subject and a predicate of its own. So here it is. Your question is participle clause. What's participle clause? We have to use a present participle. That is ing form of the verb for completing the sentence. So your exercise is in page number 52. Complete the sentences below by filling the blanks with the suitable participle clauses. The information that has to be used in the phrases is provided as a sentence in brackets. So inside the bracket, this it is given. The indications are given. You see the first one. Dash firefighters finally put out the fire. So here the bracket it is written. They work round the clock. So you have to select the verb. What's the verb here? The verb is work. What's the ing form of the verb work? That is working. How will you fill in the first sentence? Working round the clock. Can you see it? Round the clock. Working round the clock. The firefighters finally put out the fire. Clear? So here first we have to see the verb. First we have to find out the verb, and along with the verb you have to add what? You have to add the ing form. Then it will be forming the participle clause. So what's the first one? Working round the firefighters finally put out the fire. Second one you see, she watched the sunset above the mountain. So inside the bracket, she noticed the colors blending softly into one another. Which is the verb there? Noticed. So how will you write? Noticing. Form the ing form of the verb. That is noticing the colors blending softly into one another. Now see the third one. The excited horse pawed the ground rapidly. Inside the bracket, while it neighed continually. So what is the verb there? Neigh. How will you write? While neighing. Neighing. N-E-I-G-H-I-N-G. While neighing. Next you see, dash I found myself in Bangalore instead of Benares. I had taken the wrong train. So there it is perfect tense is used. Had taken. So what will you use? Having taken. Having taken. Having taken, I found myself. Having taken the wrong train, I found myself in Bangalore instead of Benares. Next you see dash, I was desperate to get to the bathroom. I had not bathed for 2 days. How will you write? Having, that is also perfect. Having not bathed for how many days? Not bathed for how many days? 2 days. Next one. Having not bathed for 2 days, I was desperate to get to the bathroom. The third one you see, the sixth one, the stone steps dash needed to be replaced. Inside the bracket, they were worn down. Worn down. It is already given in past tense. Here, wearing down, it will not suit. So how will you write the stone step having worn down? Having worn down. Next, last one. The actor received hundreds of letters from his fans. Inside the bracket, they asked him to send them his photograph. Asking him to send them his photograph. Clear? That is the participle clauses. So, present participle is verb plus ing. What is present participle? Verb plus ing. That is ing form of the verb. Clear? And I hope you understood. Next lesson we have to learn a poem. So before learning the poem, I just wanted to tell you about few FOS. You already learned few FOS that we will revise, and we are going to do some new FOS. That is the next poem we are going to learn. In between, 2 lessons are cancelled by CBSE. So that is the one lesson is the Lake Isle of Innisfree is cancelled. The snake and the mirror, that's also cancelled by CBSE. So we don't have to learn those 2 lessons. Next lesson we have to learn is a legend of Northland. Before starting the lesson, I just wanted to discuss with you few FOS. First one is alliteration, that is already we learned. That is, what is alliteration? Repetition of consonant sounds. Consonant sounds or consonant letters. What is assonance? Assonance is repetition of vowel sounds. Vowel sounds or vowel letters. Next is personification. This also you already learned. What is personification? Inanimate objects are given. Given human qualities. That is, if I say the sun is peeping through the window, the mountains clap their hands, that is personification. That is, sun is not a human being, but we are providing the sun what the human quality, that is personification. Next we have to learn simile. This is also we learned, that is the direct comparison. If any direct comparison is made using the words like and, using the words like and, as or so as, then it is called simile. That is direct comparison. She is dancing like a peacock. Then we say the FOS is simile. Then it is apostrophe. What is apostrophe? That is the new one. What is apostrophe? If a person is not present there, but in between the poem, if any directly address is made, then direct address to a person, direct address, directly addresses a person, absent. Actually that person is absent in the poem, but the poet is making the address of that person, then it is called apostrophe. Next is allusion. These are the new things you are going to learn. That is, allusion means any fairy tale character is introduced in between the poem, then it is called allusion. Fairy tale character or historical character, introduced, then it is called allusion. Introduced in between the poem, then the FOS is called allusion. Clear? Next is pun. The same word, the same meaning. The same meaning word, same spelling, but the different meanings. If I same spelling, but used for different meanings. The word has same spelling, but the meanings are two different ways we can use it. That is called pun. If I will say arm, A-R-M, arm. Arm is one of the body part is called arm. And if you say arms and ammunitions, then it is weapons, isn't it? For that also we use the same spelling arm. That is same spelling word, but it has different meanings. That is pun. Allusion means any fairy tale character or historical character is introduced in between the poem, then it is called allusion. What is apostrophe? Directly addresses a person who is absent in the poem, then it is called apostrophe. Next we have to learn imagery, that I already taught in the 8th standard. I don't know how many of you are remembering. So what is imagery in the poem? Imagery means through the words the poet can appeal to our senses. Appealing to the senses. So if the poet is describing the daffodils are dancing, isn't it? So you will get an image in your mind, isn't it? So the children are running out of the home. So you will get an image of the children running out. So you can appeal to the senses. The words are using by the poet. That is called imagery. Then we have to learn dialogue. So in between the poem itself, any dialogue is created by the poet, then it is called dialogue. Another one is polysyndactyl. Polysyndactyl. This is another poetic device. Polysyndety. T-O-N. That is a string of. So what we use of a string of conjunction in a sentence itself. A lot, more than two times. String of conjunction. Conjunction is used continuously. A string of conjunction. Then it is called what? Polysyndactyl. Any conjunction used more than once, then it is called, and by boring and boring and boring, if I will say. Clear? So and is repeatedly used. So there are two FOS there. One is repetition. Any word is repeatedly used, then it is repetition. And use of string of conjunction, that is another poetic device, that is called polysyndactyl. D-E-T-O-N. I hope you understood. One more FOS is used in the same poem, that is called repetition. This is also we learned. Repetition is any word is used more than once. Any word is used more than once, then it is called repetition. I will repeat the FOS we have to learn in this poem. First one is alliteration. Repetition of consonant sounds or consonant letters, then it is called alliteration. Then it is assonance. Repetition of vowel sounds or letters are used, then it is assonance. Simile, that is direct comparison is made using the words like as or so as, then it is simile. Then it is apostrophe, directly addresses a person who is absent in the poem, then it is called apostrophe. Allusion is including a fairy tale character or historical character in the poem, then it is called allusion. Pun is the spelling is same, but the word has two meanings. That is, for example, I said arm. Arm is one of the body part. The same way, arm has another meaning, that is arms and weapons. That is called arm. Next one is imagery. Imagery means the words which are using by the poet in order to appeal to the senses. That is called imagery. Next one is polysynthetic. Polysynthetic means use of a string of conjunction. ഒന്നിൽ കൂടുതൽ കൺജങ്ഷൻ ഒരു ലൈനിൽ യൂസ് ചെയ്താൽ അതിനെ പോളിസിന്റെക്സ് എന്ന് പറയും. Another one is repetition. That is, any word is used more than once, then it is called repetition. Sweet, sweet home. Then it is sweet word is repeatedly used, so it is called repetition. Now we will begin with the lesson. Please open your textbook. A Legend of the Northland. It is written by Phoebe Cary. Actually, she is an American poetess. She was born in 1824 and died in 1871. We can say she is a 19th century poet. She has a sister called Cary. Alice Cary. Actually, both of them used to together. This is Phoebe Cary, that is Alice Cary. Both of them used to together publish the poems, collection of poems, isn't it? She is actually self-educated lady, our poet, and died of hepatitis. So in this present poem, she deals with the Northland, a polar region completely covered with snow. The another speciality of this poem is it is a ballad. What's a ballad? Through the poem, a story is conveyed. Then it is called a ballad. It is given in your textbook itself. That is in page number 67. A ballad, it is a song narrating a story in short stanzas. Ballads are a part of folk culture, for popular culture, and are passed on orally from one generation to the next generation. A Legend of Northland is a ballad. That means it conveys or narrates a story. Let us begin. This poem narrates the legend of an old lady who angered Saint Peter because of her greed. Who is Saint Peter? Saint Peter is one of an apostle of Christ, each of the 12 chief disciples of Jesus. One among them is Saint Peter. Who is Saint Peter? He is one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through. So the first stanza, the poet is speaking about the climatic condition of Northland. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few, where the daytime is very less and the nights are so long in winter, especially during winter season. The nights are very long and they cannot sleep them through. People find it difficult to spend the whole night sleeping. Did you understand? So in the Northland, the daytime is very less, and especially in winter, the nights are very long and people find it difficult to spend the whole night sleeping. In the first line itself, there is an FOS, that is called a repetition, because which word is repeated? Away, away. The same word is repeated, that is repetition. And another FOS is there because the vowel sound A is, in the beginning you say away, away. A is repeatedly used, so it is assonance. Where next stanza, where they harnessed in swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bears' cubs in their funny, funny clothes. And where they harness means to strap and fasten the swift reindeer to the sledges. Sledges, I think you all know, in his social studies you learned, it's a cart used on ice when it snows, and the children look like bears' cubs. Cubs means young ones of the bear, and in their funny furry clothes. And during it is winter season, no? So the children, what type of dress they wear? They wear all furry clothes with a lot of feathers, isn't it? So they wear all the furry clothes, and they are compared to what? They are compared to the young one of the bears, the young bears. So while snowing in Scotland, what is the other thing the people used to do? The people harness their reindeer to pull the sledges. They cannot use the normal vehicle. They use what? The sledges. For that purpose, they fasten their reindeer to pull the sledges. Due to the extreme cold, children wear funny furry clothes which make them look like beer cups. Did you understand? Because of the cold, they wear all what type of dress? Funny furry clothes which make them look like the beer cups. Now let us see the FOS used where they harness the swift reindeer. There it is. T is repeatedly used, alliteration. To the sledges when it snows. To the sledges when it snows. S is repeatedly used, then T is also repeatedly used, alliteration. And the children look like beer's cups. Here you can say simile. The children of Northland is compared to the beer's cups. So the direct comparison is made and the word like is used, so simile. In their funny furry clothes, there it is, F is repeatedly used, so it is alliteration. They tell them a curious story, I don't believe it is true, and yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. They tell them a curious story. So there is a famous anecdote, there is a famous story, anecdote means story, in this contest and has been passed on through generations in the Scotland. So in the Scotland, people used to pass on from one generation to the another generation. Well, there is a story. Though poet is not believing it in its authenticity, but the poet feels tempted to share the tale. And they tell them a curious story, I don't believe it is true, and yet you may learn a lesson, and if I tell the tale to you. The poet is addressing the readers. So here it is apostrophe because directly addresses the reader who is not present in the poem. So the address, and yet you may learn a lesson, I tell the tale to you. There it is apostrophe because directly addresses a person who is absent from in the poem. So that is called apostrophe. Which line? And yet you may learn, isn't it? From there. So actually mythological stories are maybe far from realities of life, but they do carry what? Some message, isn't it? So that's why who wants to share? The poet wants to share with the readers. They tell them a curious story. Who is they here? They are the Northland people, the Scotland people. There is a famous anecdote in this contest and has been passed from generation to passed on through generation to generation in the Scotland. Though who is not believing it? The poet is not believing in its authenticity. The poet feels tempted to share the tale. See the FOS, they tell them a curious story. Their T is repeatedly used, alliteration. I don't believe it is true. There is again alliteration, and last two lines I told you this apostrophe. And not only apostrophe, you can see any other FOS is used, yes. And the third line again alliteration is used, and in the fourth line you can see again it is alliteration. So apostrophe is also there and alliteration is also there. Next stanza. Once when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it preaching just as he did, you know. And once when this good Saint Peter lived in the world below, so when the Saint Peter was staying on earth and walked about it preaching, so he was roaming around giving religious speech to the people. And so you know the story, isn't it? That's what he is asking. Once when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it preaching just as he did, you know. You all know that the Saint Peter is to roam around and give the the religious speeches. He came to the door of a cottage while traveling and giving the religious speeches. He came to the door of a cottage. And in traveling round the earth where a little woman was making cakes, he came across an old cottage and where a little old woman was baking cakes. He came near the old cottage who was staying, an old woman was staying, who was what work he was doing? She was making cakes, baking them on the hearth. Hearth means fireplace. See, let us see the FOS in the first. Once when the good Saint Peter. So here what character is used? Here we can say allusion because the historical person or a person's reference is made, so it is allusion. reference to a historical or literary person or event is used, then what is called, which FOS is used? Allusion is used. So, Saint Peter is mentioned in between the poem. There the FOS is allusion. Next line, there is no other FOS. Next line, lived in the world below. There is another no other FOS, and walked about it preaching. There is assonance. A is repeatedly used, and a, about a. Just as he did, you know. Just as he did, you know. There is no other FOS. Next line, he came to the door of a cottage. There it is, alliteration. Next line, in traveling round the earth, there it is, alliteration, where a little woman was making cakes. There it is, alliteration, and baking them on the hearth. There also it is alliteration. I hope you understood the FOS. Next, he came across. Who came across the old cottage? Saint Peter came across the old cottage, and where a little woman, little old woman. What was she doing? She was baking cakes. And being faint with fasting. Faint means weak. For the day was almost done. The day was almost over. He asked her from her store of cakes to give him a single one. So when the Saint Peter reached the cottage, he had seen the little old lady was baking the cakes. So he requested the lady to give him what? A cake, because he was very weak, because he was not eating anything. And being faint with, very weak because of fasting, he was not eating anything. For the day was almost done. Almost done means nearly over. He asked her from her store of cakes. She had a lot of cakes baked and kept there, to give him a single one. So, what did he approach the woman and ask for one cake to eat? He approached the woman and asked her to give him one cake to eat. Now, let us see the FOS in this line. He and being faint with fasting, there is F is repeatedly used, alliteration. For the day was almost done. There it is. Nothing, no other. Yes, D is repeated, so it is again alliteration. Next line, again it is he, H, her, H. Her is repeated. The word her is repeated, so it is repetition, and H is repeated, it is alliteration. Next line, to give him a single one. There is no FOS. Next page. So she made a very little cake, but as it baking lay, she looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. When Saint Peter asked her to give him a cake, what did she do? She made a little cake, a small cake she baked. But when it was late for the baking, what happened? She looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. So when it is baked and she had seen the cake became so big. So who doesn't want to spare that cake to the Saint Peter? This lady, old lady, doesn't want to give that cake to Saint Peter. So in the first line, it is again alliteration. Second line, it is alliteration. Third line, it is again I is repeatedly used, assonance, and it is repeatedly used, so it is repetition. S is repeatedly used, it is alliteration. So there are so many FOS are there in the third line. S is repeatedly used, alliteration. It, the word it is repeatedly used, so it is repetition. I is repeatedly used, so it is assonance, and assonance, alliteration, and repetition. Too large to give away, there is no FOS. Next stanza. Therefore, she kneaded another. So, when she found that the cake she made, actually her intention was to give this man a small cake. So, for that, in that case, when she prepared the little cake, what was the result? It became a huge one. So, she doesn't want to spare that huge cake to the whom? Saint Peter. So, therefore, she prepared another one. Therefore, she kneaded. Kneaded means make a mixture for another cake, still a smaller one. She made a very less mixture for baking the cake. But it looked, when she turned it over, as large as the first had made. So how was it? The second cake also become so big like the first one. Therefore, she kneaded another. In the first line there is no FOS. In the second line it is alliteration. In the third line you can see it is repeated repetition and assonance. And in the last line, as large as, the second cake is compared to what? The first cake. So it is simile. As is repeated repetition, A is repeatedly used, so it is assonance. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and she rolled and rolled it flat and baked it with a thin as a wafer, but she could not part with that. Then again the third cake she prepared. Actually she wanted to give Saint Peter a very small cake. So she took a tiny scrap of dough. Tiny scrap means small quantity of dough, and rolled it flat. Again she rolled it flat, baked it thin as a wafer. How did she bake? Like a thin biscuit. And she could not part with that. Part with that means give away. Why? Again the third cake also became so big. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough. So here it is T is repeatedly used, alliteration, and the next line and is repeatedly used, and rolled it flat. So here it is what? And is repeatedly used, repetition, and the continuously if you use a conjunction, what is it called? I taught you, that is polysyntacton. What is it called? Polysyntacton. That is and baked it and rolled it and rolled it. Two times what is used? The conjunction and is used. So polydictation is there, syntacton is there, polysyntacton, and that is there, and the word and is repeatedly used, and the vowel sound A is repeatedly used, so it is assonance. And baked it thin as a wafer. The cake is compared to what? A biscuit, wafer. So here a simile is used. Then the last line, she could not part with that. She could not part with that. There it is, no other FOS. For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself are yet too large to give away. So she put them on the shelf. So she herself started speaking. There the which FOS is used? The dialogue is used. My cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself. Here the FOS is dialogue, because all of a sudden who started with the dialogue? The old lady started with the dialogue. So the poetic device is dialogue. Are yet too large to give away, so she put them on the shelf. She is not at all happy to give that cake also to this Saint Peter, because she is saying that when I start to give away, that small cake becomes too large. See the FOS, I told you in the first line the dialogue is there, and at the same time there you can see yes is repeatedly used, so it is alliteration. When I eat of them myself, there it is no FOS. And next line, are yet too large to give away, there it is assonance, because are, A-R-E, there A and away A. So she put them on the shelf, there it is, yes is repeatedly used, alliteration. Then good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint, and surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. Then the moment he was actually waiting for a cake to eat, because he was very tired. So when she knew that the lady is not going to give him any cake, he was very angry, and because he was very weak and he was about to very hungry and weak. And surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. Provoke means make angry. Such a lady is sufficient to make angry for erase angry in a saint. Then good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint. In that, for he was hungry and faint, alliteration. Surely such a woman, there it is, alliteration and assonance, was enough to provoke a saint. There is no FOS. Next line, then good Saint Peter, the introduction of a historical character all of a sudden, so allusion. Wherever the Saint Peter is introduced, there the FOS is alliteration. Sorry, allusion. What is allusion? Reference to a historical or literary person, or even then we can say that the FOS allusion. Then good Saint Peter grew angry. So there Saint Peter is introduced, so it is allusion. And he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form. So you are very selfish. So you are not supposed to remain in a human form. Human form means as a human being. You are far too selfish to live in a human form. To live as a human being, you are not supposed to remain as a human being, because you are very selfish. To have both food and shelter and fire to keep you warm. Yes, because he said that she did not deserve to dwell in human form, because she was having everything. What are the things she was having? She was having food, she was having shelter, she was having fire to keep herself warm, but still she was very greedy. That's why the Saint Peter said that you are not supposed to remain in the human form. See in the first line, is there any FOS? Yes, yes is repeatedly used, alliteration, and the dialogue is there. So who is saying the dialogue? Saint Peter. Next second line, there it is, no FOS. Third line, for both food and shelter, there also there is no FOS. In the last line also there is no FOS. And now you shall build as the birds do, and shall get you a scanty food by boring and boring and boring, and all day in the hard dry wood. Now see, what did he say that? Now he made her a bird. He just gave her a curse. He said that he made her a bird to live. What type of bird? Searching for scanty food in the forest. Very less food only the woodpecker. Woodpecker, what the woodpecker used to do? The woodpecker always boring. Boring means making holes in the wood, searching for the food. Now you shall build as the birds do, and shall get you a scanty food by boring and boring and boring all day in the hard dry wood. Boring means making holes. Here the FOS pun is there, because the spelling is same and the same word has two meanings. Like I told you in the class, just explain to you, arm. Arm means one is the body part, the other one is the weapons, arms and ammunitions. So here boring means one meaning is making holes. The second meaning, boring means you get bored after listening a long lecture, isn't it? That is also, that meaning is also there. Both the boring, what the spelling is same. So the FOS is pun, P-U-N. Another FOS is also there in the same line, boring and boring and boring. There boring word is repeatedly used and is repeatedly used. So it is what? Repetition. At the same time they have assonance, they have alliteration, and another FOS, that is polysyntacton. Polysyntacton means use of a string of conjunction. More than once the conjunction is used, and twice it is used. So it is polysyntacton. What is polysyntacton means? Use of string of conjunctions in a line. So many FOS are there. All day in the hard dry wood. There it is, alliteration is also used. So who got the curse? The greedy old lady got the curse, and she became a woodpecker. Then up she went through the chimney. The moment Saint Peter said that he is going, she has to build a what? A nest, just like whom? She has to become she has to become a bird. She went through the chimney. The moment he said who be turned into a bird, this old lady turned into a bird, and she flew through the chimney, never speaking a word. She did not even speak a single word. And out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed into a bird. So at last the old lady changed into a bird called woodpecker. Then up she went through the chimney. There it is. T is repeatedly used, alliteration. And then in third line, and out of the top flew a woodpecker. There it is, assonance is there and alliteration is there. She was changed into a bird. So there no FOS is there. Now the old lady became what? A bird. She had a scarlet cap on her head and that was left the same. The moment she was baking the cake, she was wearing a what cap? What type? Scarlet. Scarlet means bright red hat she had, and that was left the same. For the moment she changed into what? Changed into a bird. That time the cap remained the same, but all the rest of her clothes were burnt black as a coal in the flame. How her dresses turned into? Her dresses turned into black color. As compared to what? Coal in the flame. The coal which burns in the flame, how the color will be? The same color whose clothes became? The old lady's clothes became. So here the last two lines, poet is used imagery. What is imagery? When the words are used in order to get you a feeling in your senses. That means when the poet said that the clothes of the old lady turned into black as a coal burnt in the flame, means you get a picture of it, isn't it? So if it is able to appeal to your senses, then we say that imagery. So here imagery is used, and the same time in the last line simile is used. Black as a coal in the flame. Her dress is compared to the coal in the flame. She had a scarlet cap on her head. Their alliteration is used. That was left the same. That remained the same. There it is, second line it is alliteration. But all the rest of her clothes were burned. There it is imagery. Black as a coal in the flame. So these last two lines imagery is used, and therefore a simile is used. And every country schoolboy, country means here village, has seen her in the wood. The children, those who are staying in the village, had seen whom? The woodpecker in the forest, where she lives in the trees till this very day, boring and boring and boring for food. What she is actually doing? She is continuously making holes in search of her food. Where? In the wood. Understood? So every country girl, the students, those who are staying, or the children who are staying in the village, had seen whom? Seen this bird, the woodpecker. Where? In the forest. What is she doing? She is actually living in the trees, and every day she is doing only one work, that is boring, making holes. Where? In the wood. For what purpose? In search of her food. Clear? So in the first line there is no FOS. In the second line H is repeatedly used, alliteration. She lives in the tree till this very day. So there it is. T is repeatedly used, so it is alliteration. Last line boring and boring for food. Boring, word boring is repeatedly used, so it is repetition. Pun, because boring has two meaning, and B is repeatedly used, so it is alliteration. That is the end of the lesson. Please go through the lesson. If you have any doubts, you can contact me. You have a homework, that is, you just find out the rhyme scheme. Thank you.